Tonight, on First at 9 this Wednesday the 16th of July 2025. Budget discussions. President holds talks with Finance Ministry officials on the preliminary framework for the 2026 budget. Calls for prioritizing digitalization and economic integration projects. Shots fired. Gunshots fired at the residence of an NPP councillor of the Waligama Pradesh Sabha. The councillor was already receiving police protection due to an ongoing case involving an alleged death threat from an SJB member of the same council. Miss or misuse. Questions over transparency and accountability spark as the T-Board and COPEF raise concerns over the misallocation of cess funds. Economic momentum. June purchasing managers' indices indicate slowed but continued growth in the manufacturing sector. Services continue to grow at an accelerated pace.
Enrolling now for the June 2025 intake and complete your degree in 2 years.
Men are the tools.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're joining First at 9 on Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story this evening. President Anura Dissanayake held discussions today with officials of the Ministry of Finance on the preliminary budget framework and development direction for the submission of proposals for the 2026 budget. During the meeting, the President inquired about the current progress in budget preparation and instructed officials to place greater focus on projects related to digitalization, public transport and rural economic integration. President Anura Dissanayake held discussions with officials of the Ministry of Finance today regarding the 2026 budget. According to the President's Media Division, the President emphasized the need to prioritize key sectors such as digitization, public transport and rural economic integration. He also underscored the importance of ensuring that project outcomes directly benefit the public. Institutions have been given until July 31st to submit budget estimates within their allocated limits. Meanwhile, during a progress review meeting with the Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports today, President Anura Dissanayake urged greater collaboration between the ministry and sports associations. He called for structured, long-term initiatives over isolated efforts such as the mere distribution of sports equipment, highlighting the role of sports as both a social and economic asset. The President also emphasized the need to develop vocational training centers and ensure the efficient use of resources to achieve the targets set for 2025. President Dissanayake also stressed that all institutions under the ministry must work collectively to achieve both physical and financial targets by the end of 2025. In another development, Sri Lanka signed a memorandum of understanding yesterday with US-based STEM Medical to establish a $15 million internationally accredited laboratory through the Sri Lanka Institute of Biotechnology. According to a statement from the President's Media Division, the facility will enhance testing capabilities in key sectors including health, agriculture and exports. Senior Presidential Advisor on Science and Technology, Professor Gomika Udugamasuriya said the initiative aligns with Sri Lanka's goal of doubling export revenue by 2030. The Chinese government today granted the entire requirement of fabric worth 5.1 billion rupees required for the 2025 school uniform program. At the official ceremony, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya and Chinese Ambassador to Sri Lanka Shi Zhenhong exchanged the relevant certificates to mark the contribution. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Amarasuriya inaugurated the Artha National Programme to provide a 5,000 rupee monthly allowance to children under institutional care. The inauguration of the national initiative to provide a 5,000 rupee monthly allowance to children under institutional care was held yesterday in Colombo under the patronage of Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. The Artha National Programme, launched under the guidance of the Ministry of Women and Child Affairs, will provide 3,000 rupees to the management of the care homes for the children's daily needs, while the remaining 2,000 rupees will be deposited into a bank account under the child's name. 9,191 children across 356 care institutions will receive the allowance under the first phase of the initiative.
ආදරණීය ප්‍රතිලාභී දරුවනි
Dear
ඔබට
children, some of you may have made mistakes in life. Perhaps an impulsive act led you here, or maybe the reasons are still unclear even to you. Regardless, we encourage you to strive to become responsible citizens who will one day make a meaningful contribution to the society and our motherland. Let this initiative mark a new chapter, a turning point that brings purpose and promise to your life.
ක්ම වේවා කියලා මම ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරනවා.
ඒ දරුවන්ට තමන්ගේ
For children who, for various reasons, have lost the chance to grow up in the care of their families, children's homes and similar institutions often become their only refuge. These circumstances can sometimes leave them vulnerable to mental health challenges, and it is the duty of these care institutions to support and guide them through such struggles. Yet when these children step out into the world, they are no different from any other child. They deserve to be embraced as our own. We remain fully committed to ensuring that they grow to succeed in life and reach their fullest potential.
විදියටත් අපි මැදිහත් වෙන්න වෙනවා.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Education officially announced today that the full consignment of fabric valued at 5.171 billion rupees required for the 2025 school uniform program has been provided as a grant by the Chinese government. At the official ceremony, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya and Chinese Ambassador to Sri Lanka Chi Zhenhong exchanged the relevant certificates to mark the contribution.
අවුරුදු ගණනාවක් තිස්සේ අතිශයින්ම
During the past, even in tough times, these grants made by the Chinese government benefited over 4 million children, including those studying at Pirivan. On behalf of the children and parents of our country, I extend heartfelt thanks to the Chinese government and the people of China.
වටිනා පරිත්‍යාගය වෙනුවෙන්.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
යාඩියා ලොව වැඩියෙන්ම අලවිවන ඉලෙක්ට්‍රික් ස්කූටරය අවාන්ස් ඔටෝ විතින්.
During a recent meeting with the Committee on Public Finance, the Sri Lanka Tea Board raised concern that it does not receive the funds collected via the cess levied on tea exports, thereby hindering its ability to promote and develop the tea industry. Also present at the meeting, COPEF member and Deputy Minister of Industry Chaturanga Abesinghe pointed out that Sri Lanka has a broader issue of the cess levies collected from industries not being spent for the development of the relevant sectors.
What we are asking you is from the cess fund, how much has been spent on promoting tea and developing tea?
So, මෙහෙමයි රුපියල් 10
The tea board does not receive those 10 rupees, nor do we receive the 4 rupees cess levied on value-added tea. Those funds go to the treasury.
අපිට එන්නේ නැහැ ඒවා. අපිට ඒක
No, we don't even receive the accounts. We have no knowledge of that. What we do receive is the 3 rupees and 50 cents levied from 2011 to 2021 and the 3 rupees levied from 2021 onward.
රුපියල් 3 මුදලත් පමණයි.
එතකොට ආණ්ඩුව අය කරන
Did the law change that all levies, fees, taxes and cesses collected by the government should be directed to the consolidated fund and from there disbursed to the relevant institutions, or have you never received those funds?
වල කල එක දැක්කේ නැද්ද?
ඔව් ඒක අපිට ආවේ නැහැ.
The EDB also encounters this issue concerning the cess. A cess is levied on exports claiming it is to develop exports. At first, the EDB received those funds for development purposes. However, now the EDB doesn't even receive 5 cents of that money. What is happening is that a cess is being levied from specific industries and the government may allocate those funds for the line ministry. However, none of that is allocated specifically for the tea board.
හැබැයි මෙතන legal issue එකක් Attorney General's office is here no?
Yes, Chairman, there's a legal issue. In fact, we have raised it up.
Yeah.
We have written to the Auditor General as well as our ministry saying that this money should come to us technically.
You know, if we are collecting money for a specific purpose, that money must be spent on that specific purpose.
At this rate, we will collect 1 billion rupees per annum. Only 500 million of that can be allocated for promotion purposes. The remaining 500 million is insufficient for development purposes. We have received requests for funds for replanting projects, but we have been unable to allocate any money for that. A lot of exporters have said they are able to export if there is a supply of tea.
If we go to target production to come to about 400 million kilos, there's a massive project which has to take place in replanting and infilling.
Gunshots were fired early this morning at the residence of Attorney at Law Tharaka Nanayakara, a National People's Power councillor of the Valigama Pradeshya Sabha. At the time of the incident, 2 police officers were on duty to protect Nanayakara and his family, as the councillor had been provided with police protection due to an ongoing case involving alleged death threats from Samagi Jana Balawege council member Lasantha Vikramasekara.
Unidentified gunmen opened fire at the residence of Attorney at Law Taraka Nanayakara, a National People's Power councillor of the Veligama Pradeshya Sabha, early this morning at around 4:45 am. 2 individuals on a motorcycle reportedly fired 7 rounds at the front gate using a 9mm firearm. Police officers assigned for Nanayakara's protection returned fire, but the attackers escaped. No injuries were reported and the suspects remain unidentified. Nanayakara had previously filed a complaint alleging death threats from Samagi Jana Balawege, councillor of the Veligama Pradeshya Sabha, Lasantha Vikramasekara, also known as Midigama Lasantha, who was arrested and later released on bail with a travel ban. The case is due to be recalled on July 25th.
I heard about 10 to 15 gunshots within the span of a minute. I contacted one of the officers on duty and he told me that the shots were fired by individuals from without. He said he returned fire, but the suspects fled the scene. The officer also instructed us to stay inside the residence for our safety. I don't know who was behind the attack, but police officers were already present for security because of previous death threats we had received.
This incident follows earlier controversy in the same local council where NPP members were supposedly abducted during its first session to elect a chairman. Meanwhile, opposition councillors of the Veligama Pradeshya Sabha convened a press conference today to express their views regarding the shooting.
තියෙන ප්‍රායසභාවක් බලය ගන්න මේ වගේ අනීති ක්‍රියා සිදුුනේ අපි දැක්කේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මෙවැනි ක්‍රියා තුච්ඡ ක්‍රියා, නින්ද්‍ර ක්‍රියා සිදු වෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ රජය යටතේ. මේ සංදර්ශනය දිගින් දිගටම කරගෙන යන්නේ ඔවුන්ට මේ ප්‍රායසභාවේ බලය ගැනීම සඳහා.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa asserts that during his tenure as Minister of Housing, Construction and Cultural Affairs, every initiative he undertook was dedicated to public welfare and the restoration of religious sites. Meanwhile, former Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena cautions that failure to raise the country's foreign reserves by 2027, in line with commitments made to the International Monetary Fund, could trigger yet another economic crisis.
In November last year, the Criminal Investigation Department launched an inquiry based on information that a Toyota V8 luxury jeep linked to Samagi Jana Balawege MP Sujeeva Senasinghe had been illegally assembled. When the case was taken up again this morning, the Fort Magistrate Nilupuli Lankapura released the MP on a personal bail of 200,000 rupees. Notably, a delegation from the Samagi Jana Balawege led by opposition leader Sajith Premadasa was also present at the court premises during the proceedings.
During my tenure as Minister of Housing, the country saw significant growth in development of housing complexes. Alongside this, we initiated programs aimed at uplifting the nation's religious and cultural spheres. Every action we took was within the bounds of the law. While some, including members of the ruling party, may choose to criticize our efforts, all that we did was with the genuine intent of serving the public and fortifying the country's religious and spiritual foundations.
Meanwhile, the launch of the book titled The Debate on Sri Lanka-China Rubber Rice Agreement by former Minister Bandula Gunawardena was held at the BMICH last afternoon. The ceremony was presided over by former President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Sri Lanka experienced a severe economic crisis for the first time in 2022 after obtaining independence in 1948. During the time, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe took control of the country and made several key decisions crucial to steer the country back towards the correct path. Among those were the decision to secure an IMF bailout package in 2023 to support the economic recovery. Subsequently, the country was granted a moratorium on debt repayments until December 2027. One part of this agreement is that foreign reserves should increase to $14.2 billion by 2027. Subsequently, in a bid to achieve this goal, the Wickremesinghe regime entered into an agreement with the IMF on a time frame with regard to the bolstering of reserves reserves. Accordingly, by the end of this year, reserves must be increased to $8.2 billion. Currently, foreign reserves stand at $6.08 billion. However, during the next 6 months, we must ensure that we reach this target. It is imperative that the government disclose whether achieving their target is possible in this scenario. The country is at a crucial point at the moment. If the country collapses once again, another shortage of essential goods will ensue, ultimately leading the country into an economic turmoil more severe than that of 2022. The former minister has authored 2 publications this year, largely centered on the UNP. But that, of course, is the root cause of the crisis we face today. The pressing question that remains is how do we navigate this challenge? The path ahead is clear. We must remain committed to the IMF framework we have agreed upon. That is the only viable route to stabilize in the economy.
Convening a press briefing following the passing of wild tusker Bhatia, the Department of Wildlife Conservation revealed that 20% of the elephant deaths that occur annually in Sri Lanka are caused by gunshot wounds. Accordingly, Director General of the department, Ranjan Marasinghe, asserted that authorities will ensure that strict legal action is enforced against those who illegally assemble firearms.
The injured wild tusker Bhatia, who had been receiving treatment for gunshot wounds over the past several days, succumbed to his injuries yesterday despite continuous efforts by a team of veterinarians and wildlife experts. The remains of the tusker were buried last night in Pulpathigama. Meanwhile, the Department of Wildlife Conservation convened a press conference today to brief the public on the passing of Bhatia.
The post-mortem was conducted and we received the report. It states that the tusker suffered from bone degeneration. That is the situation.
The incident was first reported on the 18th of June. We started treatment by the 19th of June. I have not been informed that there was a delay as such.
There were no injuries with deep holes. There were 2 small scars. At first glance, you could see that he was hurt by hunting traps constructed using firearms. A gunshot wound was seen on his trunk. There was another wound on his ear. It may or may not have been caused by a gunshot. There were a number of bullets found embedded within its body. We did not extract them because extracting the ammunition could infect the wounds.
20% of elephant deaths that occur annually are caused by gunshots. 90% of it is carried out with illegally assembled firearms. All law enforcement authorities will collectively work to apprehend those who assemble firearms illegally.
Meanwhile, as a part of the Vanaspati National Program to protect forests, measures have been taken to officially declare 16 forests located on state-owned land as nature reserves. In the Monaragala district, the newly declared reserves include Agare, Bandarawadiya, Kudagodakanda, Millakale, Wantibbagoda and Veheragalakanda forests in the Monaragala area, Ambattahela forest in the Siambalanduwa area and Kandeyaya, Poramadulla and Valiyara forests in the Vallavaya area. Furthermore, in the Ampara district, mangrove forests in Palakuda and Kalangava, Badulugoda forest in Mahawaya and the Panama North forest in Lahugala were also declared reserves. Additionally, the Rilagala and Rajagala forests in the Kandy district have also been added to the newly declared nature reserves. Accordingly, a total of 5,711.75 hectares of forest land have been designated as protected areas.
Apico Next Gen. Make the leap to faster sleep.
Welcome back. Sri Lanka's Purchasing Managers Index for June 2025 recorded slower growth in the manufacturing sector but showed accelerated growth in services. According to the latest report of the Central Bank, the manufacturing PMI was recorded as 51.9 in June, while the services PMI reached 61.9. All sub-indices of the manufacturing PMI except employment rebounded above the neutral threshold during the month. Industry expectations for the next 3 months remain positive, but respondents expressed concerns over uncertainty surrounding US trade policies. The expansion in the services PMI was mainly driven by improvement in activities related to financial services, which in turn were driven by the increase in lending activities. Despite favorable conditions in the near future, some companies raised concern over the imposition of taxes on digital services supplied by non-residents and uncertainties related to US tariffs and developments in the Middle East. The Colombo Stock Exchange closed in negative territory today as a result of price losses in counters such as John Keells Holdings, Haley's PLC and Central Finance Company. Trading was temporarily halted due to a technical glitch in the broker order management system this morning, but later resumed. The ASPI lost 0.32% to close at 18,884.96. Meanwhile, the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 decreased by 0.57% to close at 5,668.12. Market turnover crossed 17 billion rupees. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreign investors closing as net buyers, purchasing shares worth 310 million rupees. Up next, we have Dinel Samaratunga from Capital Alliance in our next segment, Economic Outlook.
The AWPR declined by 18 basis points to 7.88%, while the AWCMR edged up to 7.75%. Reserve money contracted, but market liquidity improved to a surplus of 109.5 billion. In the government securities market, primary T-bill yields rose slightly, while secondary market rates were stable. Foreign investor holdings in government securities rose by 2%. The weekly T-bill auction was oversubscribed by 1.7 times, though secondary market volumes declined by 20.2%. The rupee has depreciated 2.7% year-to-date against the US dollar. Crude oil prices rose during the week ending 11th July 2025, supported by expectations of lower US output and disruptions in the Red Sea. However, gains were capped by concerns over US tariffs. Brent and WTI ended the week up by US dollars 1.43 and US dollars 1.23 per barrel, respectively.
Welcome back. The United States has reduced its tariffs on Indonesia to 19%, down from the 32% announced earlier this month. President Donald Trump said he had agreed to lower the tariffs in exchange for what he described full access to the market for American firms. Terms of the deal were not immediately confirmed by Indonesia, but the country's President Prabowo Subianto said it marked a new era of mutual benefit with Washington. The pact is the latest to emerge after the White House renewed its threats of a barrage of tariffs on all of America's biggest trade partners earlier this month. Indonesia received a letter from Trump last week outlining plans for a 32% tariff on its goods, reportedly bewildering officials who had thought an agreement was close. Trump said yesterday he had reduced the rate after a phone call with the Indonesian president.
As you know, Indonesia is very strong on copper, but we have full access to everything. We will pay no tariffs, so they are giving us access into Indonesia, which we never had. That's probably the biggest part of the deal. And the other part is they are going to pay 19% and we are going to pay nothing. And we have a couple of those deals that are going to be announced. India basically is working along that same line. We're going to have access into India.
Indonesia has agreed to purchase $15 billion worth of US energy, $4.5 billion worth of American agricultural products and 50 Boeing jets. Indonesia ranks as one of America's top 25 trade partners, sending exports of about $28 billion to the US last year, including clothing, footwear and palm oil. That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.